Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I hope you all had a really nice day and that you've been enjoying the sunshine and that you've been going on a bear hunt and doing all of these things and being nice to your mums and dads. And your mums and dads have been nice to you as well, I hope. um, I am just going to continue writing this story to you. And I've moved a little closer, as you can see, so that if somebody does hop on during this live streaming thingy, then you can write a comment and I'll see if I can respond to that later. Okay, so chapter 4. Jonathan and Carl just had a first night at the Knight's Farm, and Carl really, really enjoyed falling asleep with the little sounds and listening to Jonathan talk, and he felt really happy. The next morning we went riding. Oh yes, I could ride. And yet it was the first time I'd ever been on horseback. I can't understand how things are just like that in Nangiala. That you can do anything, I mean. I galloped as if I'd never done anything else before. But to see Jonathan when he was riding, the woman who had thought that my brother looked like a prince in a saga, she should have been there as he came swooping along on his horse through the meadows in Cherry Valley. Then she would have seen a saga prince that she could never forget. Oh, as he came at a gallop and then leaped over the stream as if flying, so that his hair was flowing around him. Yes, you really could believe that he was a prince in a saga. He was nearly always dressed like that, or perhaps more like a knight. There were lots of clothes in a cupboard at Knight's Farm, wherever they had come from, and they weren't anything like the clothes we have nowadays, but just like knight's clothes. We had got some out for me too, having thrown away my old ugly rags, which I never wanted to see again anyway. Jonathan said we must be dressed so that it suited the times we were living in now. Otherwise, the people in Cherry Valley would think we were peculiar. The days of campfires and sagas. Wasn't that what Jonathan had said? As we were riding round that beautiful valley of ours, I asked him, they must be dreadfully olden days that we're living in here in Nangiala, mustn't they? You could say that in some ways, said Jonathan. They're indeed olden days for us, but in a way you could also say that they were young days. Have a think about that, guys. What do you think Jonathan meant? How can something be olden days and young days at the same time? I thought for a while about that, and he thought for a while about that too. And then he said, yes, young, healthy and good days, which are easy and simple to live in. But then his eyes darkened. At least here in Cherry Valley, he said. Is it different in other places? I asked. And Jonathan said that it could indeed be different in other places. What luck that we have ended up here in Cherry Valley, where life was as easy and simple as Jonathan had said. It couldn't be easier or simpler than on a morning like this. First, you're woken up in your kitchen by the sun shining in through the window and the birds twittering and happy in the trees outside. And you see Jonathan quietly setting out bread and milk on the table for you. And when you've finished, you go out and feed your rabbits and you groom your horse. And then you ride off. Oh, how you ride off. And there's dew on the grass, glittering and shining everywhere. And bumblebees and ordinary bees humming in the cherry blossom. And your horse gallops away. And you're not even afraid that it all suddenly come to an end, like everything that's fun usually does. Not in Nangiala, not here in Cherry Valley at least. We rode through the meadows, hither and thither as things came, and then we followed the path along the stream, twisting and turning, and suddenly we saw the morning smoke from the village down in the valley. At first, just the smoke, and then the whole village itself with its old houses and farms. We heard cocks crowing, dogs barking, sheep and goats bleating. It all sounded like morning, all of it. The village must have just woken up. A woman with a basket on her arm came towards us on the path. A peasant woman, I think, neither young nor old, but a bit in between, brown-skinned as you get when you're out in all weathers. She was dressed in an old-fashioned way, rather like in the sagas. "Oh, Jonathan, your brother's come at last, has he?" she said, smiling in a friendly way. "Yes, he's come now," said Jonathan, and you could hear that he thought that that was a good thing. "Rusky, this is Sophia," he said, and Sophia nodded. "Yes, this is Sophia," she said. "I'm glad I met you. Now you can take the basket yourselves." Jonathan took the basket as if he were used to doing that, and he didn't even have to ask what was in it. "You'll bring your brother down to the Golden Cockerel this evening, won't you? So that everyone can meet him?" said Sophia. Jonathan said he would do that, and then we said goodbye to her and rode homewards. I asked Jonathan who the Golden Cockerel was. "The Golden Cockerel Inn," said Jonathan. "It's the inn down in the village." Now, we talked about the word inn before, guys, in room 16. Do you remember? For those people that don't know what an inn is, have a chat with your mum and dad. It's the inn down in the village. We meet there and we talk about what we have to talk about. I thought it would be fun to go with him to the Golden Cockerel in the evening and see what kind of people lived in Cherry Valley. I wanted to know everything about Cherry Valley and Nangiala. I wanted to see if it was exactly like Jonathan had told me. Then I happened to think of something, and I reminded him about it as we rode along. "Jonathan, you said that in Nangiala you could have adventures from morning till evening, and at night too. Do you remember? But it's so quiet here, and there are no adventures at all." Jonathan laughed. "You only came yesterday, don't forget. Silly, you hardly had time to poke your nose in it yet. There will be time enough for adventures, I think." When I'd got my thoughts straight on the matter, I said that it was adventurous and marvellous enough as it was. With Knight's Farm and our horses and our rabbits and everything, I don't think I needed any more adventures than that. Then Jonathan looked strangely at me again, almost as if he were feeling a little bit sorry for me. And he said, "Well, you know, Rusky, I'd like to think that that was what it should be like for you, just like that. For I'll have you now, there are adventures that shouldn't happen." When we got home, Jonathan unpacked Sophia's basket on the kitchen table. There was a loaf of bread in it and a bottle of milk, a little jar of honey, and 4 pancakes. "Does Sophia keep us in food?" I asked in surprise. I hadn't even thought much about how we would get anything to eat. "Sometimes she does," said Jonathan. "Quite free?" I asked. "Free, yes, perhaps you can put it that way," said Jonathan. "Everything here in Cherry Valley is free. We give to each other and we help each other according to what is needed." "Do you give Sophia something then?" I said, and then he laughed again. "Yes, indeed I do," he said. "Horse manure for the rose beds, amongst other things. I look after them for her too, quite free." And then he said so quietly that I hardly heard it, "I do quite a lot of other things for her too." Just then, I saw him take something else out of the basket. It was a tiny little rolled up piece of paper, it was, nothing else. He unrolled it, read something that was written on it, and then he frowned, as if he didn't like what was there. But he didn't say anything to me, and I didn't like to ask. I thought he would tell me what was on the piece of paper when he wanted me to know. We had an old sideboard in a corner of the kitchen, and on that first evening at Knight's Farm, Jonathan had told me something about it. There was a secret drawer in the sideboard, he said. A drawer you could neither find nor open if you didn't know the trick. I wanted to see it at once, of course, but then Jonathan said, "Another time. You must sleep now." I can see quite a few children are hopping on the messages now. That's really nice. I'm going to say hello to Will, and I'm going to say, "Oh, hello, Mrs. K. We miss you. We love this story. Oh, that's great news." And I can see Ava and Kira. Oh, that's Ava and Kira. The cat is watching too. Oh, I'd like to see this. Oh, hello, Elise. Nice to see you. Right, I better get on with it, eh? I know room 16 we're almost to the part where we lifted off room 16, but I think room 15 might like to hear what's coming first. So where were we? Oh yes, the secret drawer in the sideboard. A drawer you could neither find nor open if you didn't know the trick. And of course I wanted to see it at once. But Jonathan said, "Another time. You must sleep now." Then I fell asleep and I forgot all about it, but now I remembered it again. Jonathan went over to the sideboard and I heard a few strange little clicks. It wasn't difficult to work out what he was doing. I think he was hiding the piece of paper in the secret drawer. Then he locked the sideboard and put the key in an old mortar high up on the shelf in the kitchen. Have you got a mortar and pestle? My English. Have you got one too at home? I do have one. Afterwards, we went swimming for a while and I dived off the bridge. Just think that I dared to. And then Jonathan made me a fishing rod, just like his own, and we caught some fish, only enough that there was enough food for dinner for us. I got a fine perch and Jonathan got two. We cooked the fish in our big fireplace in a pot that hung on an iron chain over the fire. And when we had eaten, Jonathan said, "Now, Rusky, we'll see if you are a marksman. You'll need to be that sometimes." He took me out to the stable and in the harness room 2 bows were hanging. I realized that Jonathan had made them, and he was always making bows for the children in the yard at home in town. But these were larger and finer, very grand objects indeed. We set up a target on the stable door and we shot at it all afternoon. Jonathan showed me what to do. I shot quite well, though not like Jonathan. He had a bullseye practically every time. It was funny with Jonathan. Although he could do everything so much better than I could, he didn't think that this was anything remarkable. He never boasted, but did everything almost as if he weren't thinking about it. Sometimes I almost think he wished that I would do better than him, that I got a bullseye once too. And he looked so pleased when I did, almost as if he had had a little present from me. When dusk began to fall, Jonathan said it was time we were on our way to the golden cockerel. We whistled for Grim and Fjaller. They ran free in the meadows outside Knight's Farm, but when we whistled, they came at once, at full gallop, up to the gate. We saddled them there and mounted them, and then we rode at a leisurely pace down towards the village. Suddenly, I felt afraid and shy. I was not really used to meeting people, least of all people like those who lived here in Nangiala, and I told Jonathan this. "What are you afraid of?" he said. "You don't think there's anyone here that would harm you, do you?" "No, of course not, but perhaps they'll laugh at me." I thought that sounded silly myself when I said it, for why should they laugh at me? But I'm always imagining things like that. "You know, I think we'll have to start calling you Carl now." "That your name's Lionheart," said Jonathan. "Rusky Lionheart, that might make them laugh. You nearly laughed your head off yourself at that, and so did I." Yes, I wanted to be called Carl very much. It certainly suited my surname much better. Carl Lionheart. I tried out how it sounded. Carl and Jonathan Lionheart are riding here. That sounded good, I thought. "Though you're still my old Rusky," said Jonathan. "You know that, don't you, little Carl?" We were soon down in the village and were clattering down the village streets on our horses. It wasn't difficult to find our way because we could hear laughter and talk from a long way away. And then we saw the sign too, a large gilded cockerel. Oh yes, here was the golden cockerel, just like those friendly old inns you used to read about in books. The light glowed in a friendly way through the windows, and you really felt like trying out what it was like to go into an inn. I had never done that before. But first we rode into the yard and we tied Grim and Fjaller up alongside a large number of other horses standing there. That was right, what Jonathan had said about you having to have a horse in Nangiala. I think every single person in Cherry Valley had come riding into the Golden Cockerel that evening. The tap room was packed with people when we went in. Men and women folk, large and small, everyone in the village was there, sitting and talking and enjoying themselves, although some of the little children had already fallen asleep on their parents' laps. What excitement there was when we came in. "Jonathan!" they shouted. "Here's Jonathan!" The innkeeper himself, a large, red-cheeked, rather handsome man, he shouted so that it could be heard above all the noise. "Here's Jonathan! No, here are the 2 lion brothers! My goodness, it's both of them!" He came forward and swung me up on the table so that everyone could see me, and I stood there on top, feeling my face going red all over. But Jonathan said, "This is my beloved brother Carl Lionheart, who has arrived at last. You must all be kind to him, just as kind as you are to me." "You can rely on that," said the innkeeper, and he lifted me down again. But before he let me go, he held me into his arms for a while, and I could feel how strong he was. "We two," he said, "will be as good friends as Jonathan and I. My name's Jossie, though I'm mostly called the Golden Cockerel. And you can come to the Golden Cockerel whenever you like. Don't forget that, Carl Lionheart." Sophia was sitting there too, at a table all on her own, and Jonathan and I went to sit with her. She was glad of that. She smiled kindly and asked what I thought of my horse, and she wondered whether Jonathan could come and help her in the garden some day. But then she just sat there in silence, and I noticed that she was worried about something. I noticed something else too. Everyone sitting here in the tap room looked almost a little reverently at Sophia, and when someone got up to go, they always bowed first towards our table. And when someone got up to go, he always bowed first towards our table, just as if there was something special about her, though I couldn't understand why. She was sitting there in her simple clothes, with a shawl over her head and her brown work-roughened hands in her lap, like any other ordinary peasant woman. What was it that was so remarkable about her, I thought. It was fun in the inn. We sang lots of songs, some of which I knew already, and some of which I had never heard before, but everyone was happy. Or were they? Sometimes I had a feeling that they had some secret troubles, just like Sophia. It was as if they occasionally happened to think about something else, something they were afraid of. But Jonathan had said that life was so easy and simple in Cherry Valley. So what were they afraid of? Oh well, between times they were happy. They sang and laughed, and everyone was good friends and liked each other, it seemed. But I think they liked Jonathan best. It was like at home in town. Everyone just liked him. And Sophia, they liked her too, I think. Though afterwards, when we were going home, Jonathan and I, we were going out into the yard and get our horses, and I asked, "Jonathan, what is so special about Sophia?" And then we heard a grumpy voice beside us say, "Exactly! What's so special about Sophia? I've often wondered." It was dark in the yard, so I couldn't see who was speaking, but suddenly he stepped forward into the light from the window, and I recognized the man who had sat near us in the inn, a man with red curly hair and a little red beard. I had noticed him because he sat there. "His name is Hubert," said Jonathan, "and he knows perfectly well what's so special about Sophia." Then we rode homewards. It was a chilly, starlit night. Never have I seen so many stars, and never such brilliant ones. I tried to guess which was the Earth star, but Jonathan said, "The Earth star? Well, that wanders about somewhere far, far away in space. You can't even see it from here." And that was just a little bit sad, I thought. We've come to the end of chapter 4, and I'll continue reading to you guys chapter 5 tomorrow. But if you guys want to go and do a little shout out to each other, you totally can. I know Noah didn't want to come inside here and be videoed together with me. So I'm making him listen to these stories afterwards. So he's actually putting a little shout out there to Will, because he knew that you were listening already yesterday, Will. So yeah, I'm pleased to see a few of you here, and maybe a few of you more are going to join us tomorrow. Hi, Noah. Thank you. I will tell him that he's not here, but I will tell him you said hi, guys. So yeah, have a really wonderful evening, nice dinner, and I'll be reading you this story for the rest of the holidays as well. So you don't have to tune in every day, but you can always listen to them at some later point when you do have time. Okay, I miss you so much, guys. And I know that Miss Shin misses you guys a lot as well. It's very strange being a teacher and not having your kids. It makes you feel a little bit strange. Bye, guys. See you tomorrow.